By now, I'm sure you understand the importance of detoxification for optimal health. But today, Dr. Thomas Yancey has some groundbreaking news about the best time to detoxify the body. The answer will surprise you since most people aren't talking about this. We'll also discuss a disturbing truth about commonly used prescription drugs and the reason why it's being censored in the news. In addition, we'll talk about how the circadian rhythm greatly impacts our health and how it has everything to do with a good detox program. Enjoy my exclusive interview with Dr. Thomas Yancey. Dr. Yancey, thank you very much for being with us. I know you've traveled very far from Canada to be with us as part of this event. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so as we start off, I know you did a lot of research on liver and circadian rhythm. I'm very excited about talking about all of this with you. Tell me about your research that you did quite a while ago, right?
It was quite a while ago, and in a way, there's a sad part attached to that. I will get to that soon. My big question at that time was, at University of Toronto, how could we preserve the liver in liver transplantation? And broadly, how could we extend the viability of the liver? And I was looking around, and in nature, we know that the black bears, it's a fascinating story. Black bears go into a den in the fall. They stay there. They hibernate for a couple of months. They are not eating. They are not drinking. And they give birth. They breastfeed, and they come out. The three bears come out in the spring, and seemingly nothing happens. And imagine the wonderful biological aspects or biochemical aspects. So my idea was that I should identify the key molecule that keeps the hibernation going, and I should put it into the liver. And I did that, and eventually I published the findings in Transplantation. It was quite well received. What was interesting that nobody jumped on it afterwards. However, I found that the liver viability could be extended 4 times if we hibernate the liver. What it means that if, let's say in a transplantation situation, if there's a match, we could use a liver from Alaska and go down to Florida. The time is a big issue. But unfortunately, because there is no financial interest, pharmaceutical companies are not interested in using a natural molecule. Everybody dropped it. So it's still. So this is the sad aspect, that it's a wonderful opportunity, and nobody has used it. But at the same time, then I went deeper into the circadian rhythm, and it's quite something that nobody really talks about it, and increasingly now it's quite hot in the medical fields.
Dr. Yancey, before we get too ahead of ourselves, you had mentioned circadian rhythm. We've been talking about it. But for the beginner out there, you explain a little bit more in simple terms what exactly this whole concept is.
The circadian rhythm really, in a way, governs the whole body and all the bodily functions, and has an effect on all of the organs. We know that overnight the temperature drops. That's a signal that now we are in a quiet, the body switches over to the overnight. Typically it's 12 hours. 12 hours we are active, 12 hours we are slowing down. And when we are slowing down, many things are happening that are important. When we are teenagers and we skip a few nights, then we know that we are missing something. And what we are really missing is, again, the detoxification and the rebuilding. So the overnight is very important. Hormones are changing, blood pressure, temperature, the whole brain is changing. We will talk more about it later on. And daytime, we are perking up. The blood pressure is higher. We are ready to fight. We are ready to digest the food. Overnight, the kidneys slow down. For example, there is no urine production, a large amount. The whole body is kind of slowing down, and really, even if you talk about a teenager, they know that overnight is so different than the daytime, but somehow medical doctors don't talk about these huge differences and the effects when we want to implement a healing protocol, any kind of healing protocol, that the circadian rhythm has to be kept center and foremost.
The reason why I just love our time together here is because you're putting back in touch for people this rhythm. And what I mean by that is, so often I think now more than ever in modern times, it is difficult for people to even be connected to what we're saying. And I say this very respectfully. So many people, millions and millions of people, are having a hard time getting up in the morning. This is like my best time. But people think I'm crazy, right? Because they're so sluggish in the morning, right? Because of all the issues going on. They don't feel like getting up early in the morning. Like you say, in the circadian rhythm, this is a normal thing for us. Just before the sun rises, for us to get up and to do these meditations or prepare for our day, and then to just feel more energy during the day. And then I think with technology and artificial lights and mobile devices, and people are on computer and watching television 10, 11, 12 at night. They're out in big cities where it's all lit up. And EMF, all the wireless technology, people are literally wired and not feeling very relaxed, that a lot of people, I feel, unfortunately, so sadly, are disconnected from what you're bringing up about how important it is to follow a more natural circadian rhythm. I think probably the best thing, I'm saying it as a joke, the best thing probably for everybody would be maybe for a week, we have all the lights on from 6 a.m. till about 7, 8 at night, and then all the power would go out. What would people do with all the energy down and out, black, nice and calm and quiet? Everybody would feel so much more relaxed. I've noticed when I shut things down at night, it allows my body to relax, to go to sleep, and do what it's supposed to do. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and probably then what it means, we would shut down the Wi-Fi, and that's a big plus. Overnight, we shouldn't have the Wi-Fi on, and the phone should be switched off, because then we can detoxify much better. But again, we will talk about it later. So it's very important, the electromagnetic field.
This is why I'm very pleased to have you a part of this event, because nobody has really gone deeper into the idea of the circadian rhythm. So why don't you explain a little bit more? Because again, I know we're talking about liver health, but you know, the health of the whole body has a lot to do with the health of the liver. So tell us how circadian rhythm affects our whole life.
So with the circadian rhythms, first of all, we have the center in the hypothalamus. And it has implications that it is in the hypothalamus because we know that, actually the small center for the circadian rhythm, the central clock, is 2 times 100,000 cells. So it's basically it's a 250,000 cells that synchronizes the whole body and all the functions. What's interesting that these little clocks are also present in the major organs. So the liver has a local clock, the kidneys have clocks, and they all correspond. There's connections through the neurons, but also hormonal, and it's synchronized. So there are problems, for example, people who live in a submarine. They are hauled by some of the individuals cannot stay there because that dysfunction, they are shifting away from the 24-hour clock, and then including the liver and all the organs are getting damaged.
So in other words, what you mean is some of these people who are in the submarines, if they stay too long, their bodies they can't function. They start getting very sick.
Correct. And that is known in the military, and this is a risk factor that they have to exclude or watch basically at the beginning, these individuals. So with the circadian rhythm, over the last couple of years, it started in Europe. They realized that certain drugs when it's given at certain time, the effect is different. So, and by now we know that more than 50% of the best-selling drugs around the world have a tremendous variations in their effects, and it can be 5 times more or 5 times less. Imagine you take a liver drug or a heart drug, and in effect, for the body, it's 5 times stronger. So this is one of the reasons why more than 100,000 people die in just in the United States from drugs that are given at the proper time, and yet they are not, they are causing tremendous negative side effects.
Oh yeah, just like what you were just talking about, it's incredible. Most people in the United States, I'm sure it's similar in Canada, they're taking many different medications, but there's not much discussion at all about the circadian rhythm and the relationship of all these drugs that people take at different times throughout their lifetime of taking these pills. So sometimes they may take drug 1, 2 in the morning, but then later on they take it, and the interactions, if what you're saying is so true, we know this to be true, that it's 5 times stronger. My goodness, what if they're taking it at the wrong time?
Exactly. And this is why the circadian clock dysfunction plays a tremendous role in all pathologies and all chronic conditions. And it can be, cardiovascular or cancer, or really the even liver conditions and liver diseases.
Now, you're saying all of this is grounded in the research, right?
It's just recent research. This is very interesting. It's coming up. People are waking up that, wait a minute, why don't we have the doctors telling to the patients? For example, angina and stroke happens always in the morning, almost always in the morning, because normally the high blood pressure goes up between 7 a.m. and noon. It's not happening at 6 p.m. So then logically we have to follow with the drug and the application of the drug the time of the day when really have to focus on certain medical conditions. And normally the doctor should talk about it, and normally the pharmaceutical companies have to talk about it. But what came up is in the research now recently that again more than half of the drugs have a tremendous effect on the biological clock that is related to these conditions. And we have to redo all the clinical studies. So the FDA is quiet, the pharmaceutical companies are quiet, because we talk about huge amount of dollars at cost.
Yeah, because in other words, what you're describing here, if they were to look at it, I mean, they're not even looking at it yet, but if they were, then perhaps more people would be nervous about taking their products and maybe not use nearly as many.
Yes, that's maybe one of the explanation. There was a French study when they gave a drug, a toxin, basically, all the drugs are toxins in a sense, to mice, hundreds of mice. It was a large study. They gave it in the middle of the day. They ramped up the dose so that 100% of the research animals died, unfortunately. And they gave exactly the same amount in the middle of the night, and 100% survived. And to me, it's shocking if you think about it, that how come the body can take so much beating overnight, but then we will get to that overnight is a time for detoxification. Now, with a bit of smile, we could say that even they did a study with ethanol, with alcohol, and there is a multiple-fold difference between the toxic effect of the ethanol if we drink, let's say, in the morning or in the evening. And we shouldn't forget that the liver get drunk first. So because the alcohol goes through the liver first. So and of course it can cause fatty liver conditions if we talk about the alcohol. What's interesting that there was a very, very good study showing that glutathione, well, I shouldn't say cures, but it helps tremendously reversing both the fatty and non-fatty liver conditions. High level, something like definitely over 1,000 milligram, it was given intravenously. But most likely it's more effective if it is given overnight. I would say in a rectal suppository, because normally, naturally, the nighttime is the time frame when the glutathione levels goes up, both in the brain and in the liver. These are the two organs that have the highest level of glutathione normally.
Let me interrupt you for a moment, Dr. Yanasi, because I know what you're already starting to talk about is so important. We've known each other for years, and I've so appreciated our friendship over that time. But you really made such a simple point with me a long time ago about the idea that people should understand what you're talking about is our detoxification pathways are so well designed to do their thing at night. The brain shrinks and pushing out toxins, and all of these things are happening at night. And then when you think about that concept, so it's amazing what you're going to continue to talk about here. And so many people are eating too much food and the wrong kind of food, taking medications, drinking in the middle of the night, staying up too late at night. All of these things are disturbing the most ideal time, which is what you're talking about, for when the body is really ready to mobilize and get rid of these toxins that we don't need in our body.
Actually, the time-restricted feeding studies are very interesting because, and recently, just a few days ago, a major study came out. They claim that this is the first one. When they tested if people are fed between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m., so in the morning. You may remember our grandparents always talk about it, that for the morning you should eat like a king, for lunch as a rich man, and for evening as a beggar. I don't know if you remember that saying, but finally now we have the study, and this is the first study. Over the last couple of years, we heard a lot about ketogenic diet, and it's good for the liver and good for the whole body, but they never really specified what is the best time. And now what the study came out that if you eat only between 8 and 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., then first of all, you are not hungry in the afternoon and in the evening. And secondly, you lose, and you can eat the same thing that normally you would eat later on. And secondly, you would lose weight. Now, I have to admit, over the last week, I did that. I followed this, and I lost 6 pounds in a week without major efforts. My family complained that I am not eating this dinner, but that's the way, I just had a tea or something very simple. But it's beautiful, and it really corresponds with what you have mentioned, that in the daytime we have to eat, and in the nighttime our body does the detoxification and the rebuilding.
Yeah, that seems interesting. That maybe this might be too extreme for some people listening, but if someone has a serious health problem, they're on medications, they want a way out, their energy levels are so low, they are overweight, they do have chemistry problems. Here it is, of course, people have to eat. But what you're suggesting is perhaps it's better to get that eating done as soon as you can during the day and give your body a break at night so that it can then focus in on what it really needs to do, which is to get these toxins together and prepare them to be eliminated the next morning.
I will still jump back a bit to the circadian misalignment because, for example, it reduces glucose tolerance that really ties to the liver and to our energy metabolism. So, in fact, now they talk about the circadian misalignment even in cancer, and the more aggressive is a cancer, the more the disalignment is present in cancer cells. It's very interesting. So there's a strong correspondence. Clearly, this is an untapped field. Many groups are working on the circadian rhythm, and everybody realizes that this is such a central point. It's difficult to study. Probably that's the reason why we had to wait for such a long time, because you have to watch those cells, for 24 hours. and there are these signaling molecules that show some light, so it's not easy. But researchers are waking up that this is a huge untapped field how we can provide even eventually individualized excellent treatment, because we all have a bit of variations, like every person, especially if somebody has a chronic conditions. There's already a dysfunction, misalignment is there, so we almost have to follow the misalignment with a treatment.
Yeah, and I feel it's so important what you're bringing up here, because as people listen to this in this event, they've already heard me say over and over again that with all of this research that will even come out in the next year or two, to wait for this to hit the medical offices where the doctors are going to tell the patients this, what they're hearing today with you and me, could take years before it's even mentioned. And that's not even bringing into account how will they manage this in their offices? How will they coach these people? Most of the medical offices aren't even prepared for this. So it really is on us to learn about this info, work with a healthcare provider who appreciates this, so they can get busy in taking action.
Well, there are little things what we all can do. Now there are these smartwatches that can monitor our whole life 24/7. We can measure the body temperature. So if somebody wants to go deeper, really can see the personal rhythm, and that can help a lot. I would mention there's a wonderful study about microbiome, how it affects the circadian disturbance through the liver. It's quite fascinating that the microbiome can communicate with the internal clock of the liver. And once the internal clock of the liver is affected, then the whole liver metabolism and all the functions of the liver are shifting. So, this is mind-boggling if you think about it, that you change a few bugs in your gut and it changes the whole body. But this is the pathway, and this study talks about this can create even depression. So it all starts with a little bug through the liver and ends up causing depression.
Wow.
To me, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is. You're blowing my mind, because I think of it in practical terms, what you just described. Somebody has something going on in their gut. It's no good. In real terms, they're very depressed. Now here it is, you explain all of this to them, and they have to stay on a program that clears their gut up, calms it down, gets it stronger and healthier, so that it can send back to the liver a better message, so that the liver can do its thing again in the proper way. And if the person is depressed already, again, I'm not making a joke of this, then it's a matter of they have to be consistent with this program to make a difference. And now you're explaining exactly why it is so important to stay consistent in clearing up the gut so it can send a better message back to the liver.
So these chain reactions are really, I believe, that we talk about the future of medicine. Because we didn't, it was very narrow-minded. Like you have you are coughing, here is a medicine for that, and that's it. You have a problem in the gut, then here is the medicine. But once we understand these chain reactions, a whole new way of looking at a chronic condition, really, because mainly we are talking about chronic conditions here, that opens up. And it seems to me that we can almost forgive mainstream doctors that they are not talking about this circadian rhythm. But in the alternative community, I really believe that we all have to wake up. We have to be at the front line, as you mentioned, like functional medical specialists. They are the one who should carry this knowledge forward and expand it and really create a much better healing environment for the individuals.
Yeah, no doubt. The integrative healthcare providers that are watching this program right now, this is a great opportunity for them, and I couldn't agree with you more. It's very unrealistic to expect a conventionally trained doctor to get a hold of this stuff, but they should really look into this research. Are there other things you want to add to this?
Yes, there's one issue. So the hypothalamus, again, that has the number one most important central clock. And But because the hypothalamus releases hormones, obviously it's part of the brain, but it hangs outside of the brain. So it is exposed for any kind of attacks. It can be toxic compounds or even pathogens. And what happens that calcification happens. 2/3 of people over 50 have calcified hypothalamus. 2/3, very high. It's just a question of degree. Immediately, what it means that there is less melatonin production, and when we know that melatonin triggers the extra release of glutathione. So again, we talk about a little chain reaction that if we are not taking care, if we let our hypothalamus to be calcified, then there are sleeping disturbances, and then we can talk about Alzheimer and like type 3 diabetes. So and of course with chelation, calcium disodium chelation, we can decalcify the hypothalamus, and then we can regain back the fuller function of the hypothalamus. So it's and the circadian rhythm comes back stronger.
Right. It's incredible what you just outlined. The hypothalamus. That alone, that one central focus that I have not heard any of the integrative healthcare providers really keying in on, taking a look at that, it's no wonder that so many people are having problems sleeping at night. Exactly. With so many people reckless with their lifestyle for a long time. Now they want to get back on track. And here it is, we're talking about restless sleep. The night is the key for detoxification. Absolutely. You've got all these things going on during the day, whether the person is not eating really the best, they're dehydrated, they're taking lots of medications, and now the nighttime is so compromised. It's no wonder that so many people I often hear, they say, I tried one thing or another, not nearly long enough either, and they're still frustrated, Dr. Yanasi. They're not seeing results.
Because the pathway is not open. If the hormones, if the melatonin is not there, then it is a chain reaction. There's a very interesting study that circadian melatonin disruption can be used as an indicator of delirium. Imagine that even now we know that the melatonin is like an early warning sign for a serious medical condition like that, and we can measure it in the saliva. Could be even it could be measured in the saliva. So
yeah, what a simple test. Are you deficient in melatonin? And it's an early warning sign for all kinds of things related to toxicity, and then of course the breakdown of brain function, digestion, you name it.
And the melatonin is linked, by the way, as it has cancer protective effects. So typically, if you talk about the measurement, it should be measured maybe 2 hours before going to bed, and right before going to bed, and early morning when we wake up, and then we see the melatonin levels. It can be done from the saliva. I have this study in front of me, and I really have to mention that the ethanol toxicity differs depending on the time of the day. This is the title of the study, 2018 study. And there was a marked difference. Like they did it with fish because it's easier, pouring in a bit of alcohol into the fish tank. But in one case, in the daytime, 85% died. And when they gave the same amount in the night, only 6%. There was a mortality of only 6%. So it's more than 10 times difference, again, between daytime and nighttime. And we really have to wake up that this is a huge issue. But it also means, probably on a practical term, that people can go to the pub. Well, I shouldn't say we can't go, but if they really want that, they should drink a bit of alcohol late at night and not early morning. So this is the practical aspect.
Dr. Yanasi, I know earlier we were talking about calcification of the hypothalamus, but I'm sure people will be wondering in their mind, no pun intended, how do they know if the hypothalamus is calcified or not? I mean, what kind of test?
Well, officially only with a brain scan. That's the only way to know for sure. But if somebody has sleep disturbances and the person is over 50, then most likely calcification of the hypothalamus. Now the question pops up: why the hypothalamus is calcified, and it seems that again this is hanging outside of the brain, so it's not shielded by the blood-brain barrier. It means that and in all of us, in the blood, there are pathogens. So pathogens can go there. This is the hypothalamus. And some of the pathogens that has not a strong outside wall, they build a calcified outside wall for themselves to protect against the immune system. These bugs are very clever. And especially if we talk about these biofilm communities, and that's a huge topic, and I went quite deep into it. These bugs realize that if they stick together and if they build a wall, then it's 50 times or 100 times more antibiotics are needed to bust it and to kill them. So something similar is happening in the hypothalamus, that the bugs are drawing calcium close to themselves and build these walls in a way similar to what we have in the pockets of our teeth. And then the bugs jump over and they calcify the arteries, and they show the same DNA. So that's really, we just have to mention it in brackets. But if you keep your mouth clean, then most likely you do a lot of good to avoid calcified arteries and also calcified hypothalamus.
You just made me think about also in a practical sense, if somebody has these plaque issues in their mouth, they have arthritis throughout their body in different places. They have plaque buildup that they know full well from medical testing for heart issues. It would be very unrealistic in my mind, as I'm talking to you, to think that somehow magically their hypothalamus is clean as a whistle. It's the opposite. If we're calcifying somewhere,
exactly,
we're calcifying in other places. If we're infected in the mouth, we can be infected in the heart. If we've got liver problems, we have blood, we have lymphatic problems. Everything, this is so beautiful, what we're talking about here. Every conversation I've had for this liver health docu-class, this fatty liver docu-class, has been all about making these connections so that people can appreciate that the body is really trying to tell us, be careful. There are warning signs.
So this link it was beautiful. So whenever one part of the body is calcified, then we could include the hypothalamus as well.
So as we continue now, I know this is a very big part of your work, is making people understand that there really is a difference between daytime detoxification and nighttime detoxification. We can do both, and both are fine. If we're successfully detoxifying, great. But talk about the difference a little bit more, please.
I would jump back for a second about the reason why we have to detoxify. There are more than 80,000 toxins, man-made chemicals outside in the environment. The average adult has 700 toxins. And in the baby's umbilical cord, typically we can measure more than 200 toxins. So basically in a lifetime, we pick up an extra 500. Now, each and every person has a different toxic combination. And frankly, nobody measures all of the toxins or tests for all of the toxins, the 700, because it would be too expensive. Typically, we focus on the toxic heavy metals. I call them the bottleneck of all of the toxins. Why I call it this way? Because the toxic metals really slow down the liver tremendously. So the phase 1, phase 2 detoxification steps are really slowed down. The liver becomes sluggish. So if we remove the toxic heavy metals, if we focus on that first, then the liver wakes up and is able to remove all of the other toxins from pesticides, DDT, and PCB, and the list goes on and on and on.
And Dr. Yanasi, just to jump in so people are perfectly clear what kind of metals we're talking about, aluminum is without a doubt being sprayed in the skies People understand about geoengineering. If they don't, they should look it up. So aluminum is heavily being sprayed in the skies. Aluminum is in so many things, including vaccines, at a rate that we've never seen before. Heavy metals, mercury-based silver fillings, all the heavy metals that people are seeing in not so much in processed foods, but even in health foods. They have to be careful about the source of the ingredients because there's heavy metals in that as well. The list goes on and on. In fish, seafood, people need to understand this is where we're getting a lot of heavy metals into our body. Such an important topic.
I have a small tip, just an idea that those who cannot avoid getting a vaccine, if they get it over, late in the evening, if they give that vaccine late in the evening to their kids, when the detoxification is much more, when the body is ready to detoxify, then maybe they can avoid those circumstances that can lead to autism or ADD. Or this is just, again, nobody talks about it, and I want to raise it up because for some people out there who really in a situation that they have to deal with the toxic aspect of vaccines, then later in the night giving the vaccine would be a very good idea.
Yeah, and just to be clear, so people aren't confused, if they go for a heavy metal test, they won't even get the aluminum result because an aluminum is technically not a heavy metal. But all of these metals do stop us, like you were saying, in getting these poisons, other poisons out of our body, right? Like glyphosate, all the pesticides, the herbicides, all of this, right?
Yes, and I will talk about the combination of the toxins because typically what we are looking at that, well, maybe we have certain amount of lead or certain amount of mercury, but there was a study when animal study, they gave the amount of mercury that only 10% of the animals died. And then to a different group of animals, they gave lead the amount that only 10% died. So we talk about 90% survival rate. So it sounds reasonable, in this study. When the same low amounts were given to a third group, then 100% died. So here we start thinking about that. What happens with the synergy of toxins? Not many talk about the synergy of toxins. It's a major concern. What we see that we typically, as we do the detoxification, then either the toxins come out in sequence. So certain toxins come out, like mercury comes out for a few weeks, and then it tapers off, and then the lead picks up, and then a few weeks later, and so on. Or the type of toxin comes out that is the more prevalent in the body. So this is important to know because some practitioners are doing tests why the individual is involved in the detoxification, and they show, well, you have mainly mercury. Maybe it's true at that given time, but if normally we should do every second day a test, and then we would see these patterns and these curves, how the toxins are coming out. So I just mentioned that because in most people's mind, they don't know how to sequence or how to put the toxins there. And typically this is a question that we get, that how do they come out in one group or in sequence?
There's also a whole other aspect. I think it's difficult for the average person to appreciate what we're saying because they're constantly reminded about anything they might bring up. Toxicity in food, something that might be in a vaccine, or, heaven forbid, they might say something about geoengineering in space and the aluminum falling down. Most of the time, the message that they hear is, it's such a small amount, like you were saying about the synergy of all of these toxins and the fact that they do bioaccumulate in our body into the tissue and it builds up over time. Coupling the fact that they're always told, oh, it's such a small amount, don't worry about it, in every single thing that's out there, with the idea that most of their life, maybe most people feel fine. And then all of a sudden, the bathtub is too full. And now the toxins, every little thing seems to be bothering them. And they say, what's wrong with me? I was fine for 30, 40 years. Now I can't get up in the morning. I feel so sick. This is why I feel like so many people are disconnected. They're never taught properly early on, and then they're hit with a problem. It's very hard to unravel all this.
Also, that is another aspect with the detoxification that is sometimes hard to understand, that when we lose weight, well, I have to step back. So when we eat in the evening, then less digestive juices are produced, and basically the body is not in that stage when it burns the energy, so it quickly stores it into the fat cells. But the fat-soluble toxins are stored as well. So those who are eating later in the day, they are storing more toxins in the body. And overnight, over 10, 20, 40 years, they accumulate more toxins, those who are heavy eaters later in the day, than those who are heavy eaters earlier in the morning, because they burn everything. And they are not storing the toxins.
Right. You're connecting the circadian rhythm. You mean our natural. It seems like common sense.
It's so logical.
It's so simple.
Nobody talks about this kind of things.
Energetically, if you just took away all the distractions, we want to calm down, be with family, not to get too corny here, to relax and sit or lay around and have conversations and not be so wired in the evening. And here it is, you're describing how our lifestyle counters that, where we're throwing all kinds of things in. And on top of that, we are also very stressed out. So hormonally, that's a mess too. It's no wonder that all of this stuff continues to bioaccumulate. And then we try to get enough sleep, or we take sleeping pills, and it's never enough to feel better for the next day.
We have almost like a study visible right there. If you go around in Europe and if you go around in the United States, you see that there are more individuals who have extra weight in the US. And the explanation is, my explanation is that in Europe, and I grew up in Europe, I lived there for 30 years, it's very heavily emphasized in every family that for the morning you have to eat a lot, and at lunchtime it's almost in the laws or regulations that lunchtime every corporation, every company has to feed the people with a big food. So they are eating a lot, and because they are full, they come home and they are not eating as much. And here in the US, it's just the opposite. And that's the major reason I believe that why in the US there's such a big problem, both with extra weight and also with extra toxins.
Okay, so Dr. Yanasi, the really good stuff now. We got everybody's attention about the value of the circadian rhythm, how we need to normalize and get reconnected to that and improve that in our own lives. We get it. Talk about the ideal detoxification strategy. Where do we begin?
If you don't mind, I will jump back just for a second, because I found two very interesting studies. One is that their livers in Connecticut is fully contaminated with cadmium. And another study in Poland, the same thing, that heavy metals in the red deer on very high level is present. Why I mention that? Because sometimes mentally we have difficulties understanding that, well, first of all, we believe that nature is clean, wild animals are clean, and we believe that we can eat livers. No, unfortunately not. Maybe from short-lived animals. And it's almost like the same idea when we can take, we can eat small fish, but not big fish, because the big fish eats the small fish and bioaccumulates the toxins. And this is why tuna and, some of the big fish are really forbidden to be eaten, for example, by pregnant women, because it's loaded with mercury. So this picture that all the animals now, whether in water or dry land, all those animals that are living for a couple of years, they bioaccumulate the toxins. and we just maybe we can eat rabbit liver, if we really want to, or ducks, or if somebody hunts for ducks. But the concept is that we have to understand that if these animals bioaccumulate toxins, then we do the same, because we link for a long time. So we have to incorporate into our life how to detoxify all the time, and for certain periods, it's beneficial if we focus on a good detoxification. Normally, naturally, the detoxification happens overnight, as I mentioned with the previous studies. So the question is how to do it. Probably the ideal detoxification would be like an intravenous chelation overnight. But this is not feasible. So I believe the second best step is a rectal suppository. Now, in Europe, it's much more prevalent. Like all kids go through some rectal suppositories to control their high temperature when they are kids.
Really?
So it's more accepted. In North America, it's something very strange. A rectal suppository.
No, without a doubt. If I were to say that the way to detoxify is to stick something up your butt, again, people would think I'm joking. You're absolutely right. In the United States, for sure, that is not part of our culture.
But here's the reason, because the rectum, the last 10 inch of the rectum is anatomically part of the skin. So it's like a transdermal absorption in a sense. Before that, in the whole, small intestine, large intestine, colon, everything that is absorbed there goes through the portal circulation, goes to the liver, and now we are back to the liver again. So the liver gets all of the pathogens from the food, and together with the food, whatever we pick up, and all of the toxins. So what also happens, the liver breaks down the food and breaks down these complex molecules, what we have in the intravenous chelation, the calcium disodium EDTA that is typically there. But with the rectal suppository, we can shoot it straight into the systemic circumnavigation. We can shoot it straight to the systemic circulation, and therefore we are not dealing with the breakdown of these complex molecules. If we take orally the same compound, the EDTA, then about 5% reaches the whole systemic body circulation.
And that's simply because if we're doing it orally,
then it breaks,
you're dealing
breaks
with
down.
the digestive system and all the acids in it.
So, but I would say that the timing almost most important. We talked about that overnight the glutathione levels go up, and that's an indication that the detoxification is much stronger overnight. So wouldn't it be more logical to support a normal, natural process instead of go against it, that no, we want you to detoxify in the middle of the day, when your body is not ready for that?
Oh, that's interesting. If somebody were questioning you right now, Dr. Yanasi, the whole idea of why don't we focus a little bit more on doing everything we can to support proper detoxification at night? You just said something right away which should just nail it. Glutathione, which is the master antioxidant and so well known to help support detoxification. Are you saying no matter what, we know for a fact that glutathione levels go up in the evening for all of us?
Absolutely, and very high levels. So that's right there an indication that higher level of glutathione is needed, and also support is needed overnight, because in every chronic conditions, the glutathione levels are lower, and this was measured in other studies. So it's so logical that we give a hand to the body, we support, we raise the glutathione levels overnight, and then the detoxification really can go on a much higher level.
So the suppository itself would actually have glutathione.
Yes.
And putting it in the rectum in the evening, the best time to do it is also in a place where it is so easily absorbed into the body. Two things which would be great for us, correct?
Yes, and the third one is that there's a delayed absorption. If we eat something, then we chew on it, and the time frame is short. Or if we get an intravenous chelation, then it's typically 2 or 3 hours. But overnight, from the rectal suppository, there was a study in California, and even 7-8 hours later, they could pick up the ingredients of actually the calcium disodium EDTA that was in the suppository. So it's beautiful that we hit the right time, we respond to the need, and there's a delayed overnight absorption.
And isn't it fair to say that if we don't have the sufficient resources, we're deficient in vitamin C, we're deficient in vitamin D, K2, magnesium, the list goes on and on. We're low in glutathione. If we don't have these supplies, then all these toxins that are taken in, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, like aluminum from the sky, all this stuff going into our body, breathed in, eating, drinking, they just get reabsorbed and over and stored, and they wreak havoc in our body. So this is so important.
Yes, and this is why my protocol is for detoxification that we free of charge, we provide charcoal that should be taken about 2 hours before going to bed. So the charcoal is waiting there in the small intestine, waiting for the liver to pump out the toxins through the bile duct. And then it captures the toxins or the remnant of the toxins. And actually, we call it stop reabsorb. So it keeps it for elimination. The charcoal is not being absorbed from the gut. So it keeps it for elimination, because otherwise, if we don't have this type of bind there, then many toxins are being reabsorbed, especially the water-soluble toxins, together with the water that is being reabsorbed from the colon. Of course, the body wants to save water, so it picks it up from the colon. But unfortunately, much of the toxins are also reabsorbed. So we just threw it in free of charge, so that charcoal is simple. I looked into clay, but clay is always a bit, there are impurities. This is why there is green clay, and red clay, for example, has iron, and yellow clay. So it's not really clean. With zeolite, it can be pH dependent, the holding power of the toxins. So as it goes through the body, it's not consistent. But the charcoal can be extremely pure. And we know that it has a mild antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral, antiparasitic effect. So there are secondary benefits. Actually, there were 2 studies that showed that it was a rat study, lifelong study. And one group received charcoal together with the drinking water. It means that whether the rats were eating or not, it didn't matter. And the charcoal consuming rats survived for 40% longer. It's there's magic in charcoal. Nobody researches really charcoal because it's so cheap. There's not much money in it.
Yeah. You're going to appreciate this. The only thing I'm thinking about, of all the stuff I did with the Holistic Oral Health Summit, and the whole idea of safely removing mercury-based silver fillings, there's so much to it. Only one thing that impressed me the most about the biological dentist I went to, with all the tube sucking the air away and ionizing the air, and a ICU room and all this stuff, the precautions, the vest he wore, the mask, and my glasses, and suiting me up and trying to protect me. One thing he asked me to do before he ever touched me with the drill was to take water with charcoal, which I thought was unusual, but made sort of intuitively made sense. Swish it around in the mouth, makes you look all black and ugly looking, and then he told me to swallow it. And so now I have even greater appreciation as I hear you talk about charcoal. Such a great way to protect anybody looking to defend themselves from the presence of toxins. It's really great to have that lining the inside to sort of capture all of it and escort it out of the body.
What I found that about 1 gram of charcoal in the evening, and this is what I try to take every day or every night actually, is clinically relevant or significant. So, because immediately people ask how much charcoal. That's about a good dose, good level to start with.
It's amazing. Everybody that I've been talking to, I'm so glad we're talking about this in particular because it's mobilizing toxins. Everybody gets it. Toxins are bad for you. They make you sick. Let's get them loose out of the tissues. Let's get them out of the body. Make sure the colon is working well hydrated, eat fibrous food, eat organic, stay away from chemicals. But hello, what happens when you're mobilizing this? What is going to attract to it and help pull it out? Charcoal is great.
There was a stunning study. Typically, studies are today funded that is very specific and goes very deep. And here is a study, University of Rochester, 2013, so 6 years ago. And it was, the researchers were astounded that the brain shrinks 60% overnight. 60. And it was such the technology was not available prior to these studies. What happens that basically there's a lymphatic system, how they call it. It's the specific lymphatic system that washes through the brain, and the neurons shrink, and these pathways where the brain is washed through is opening. Those are the pathways that are opened up.
Yeah, there's more space, you're saying, there because the brain shrank to allow this rinsing process to occur.
I think we should never, especially in the alternative medical community, we should never go against major bodily processes. We always have to be aligned, and we have to support when something gets weaker, like when glutathione level lowers, or this should be our normal, natural way of helping individuals.
So, Dr. Yanasi, as we're closing out this amazing discussion, again, I so appreciate your time. Talk about your big view. Help us understand this whole idea of the development of chronic disease in general, especially cancer, and more importantly, how do we get out of this mess?
Well, everything starts in our mother's body. When we are in the womb, unfortunately, typically from the mother's liver, the fetus picks up a large amount of toxins. And this is why, as I mentioned, in the umbilical cord, babies are being born now with 200 plus toxins, and they picked it up from the mothers. So first step is obviously, before you conceive a child, let's focus on detoxification. Not immediately, but a year before, thinking over. Typically, women have kids later in life. They can. It means that they accumulated more toxins than when grandparents' time when they got the first child much earlier. The mother's body looks at the fetus as a way of getting rid of the toxins. And unfortunately, but this is how it works. And when, for example, the bones are being built up for the baby, then if there is lead, and for sure there is lead in the mother's bones, then it's being mobilized and passed on to the baby. So that's the first situation that we have to be concerned and actually talk to the mothers.
Not to interrupt for too long, but already just a simple, powerful message you're giving to every young person out there in their 20s, thinking about having a family, wanting to have children. Remember, the fetus is not chewing food. It's taking every liquid from the mother's lifestyle, what she drinks, what she eats, and her entire immediate environment, air quality, relationships, everything. So important that we think about this more.
It's maybe you will smile, but I love going to weddings like all of us. And I'm looking at the white dress and I think, how white is the body inside? This is always in every, it's a...
You're always thinking like a scientist in detoxification, and is the white the same as the pure white inside? Maybe not.
Yes. So that's the first dose that we all got, from our mother especially. And then later on we get the vaccines. And so when a child is when the doctor tells to the parents that your child is autistic or has ADD, then it's the combination of the two toxic load, maybe 80% from the mother and 20% from the vaccines or from the bad food, or maybe the other way around. But the whole concept should be discussed that these are the sources, and now it's autism is tied to mercury, higher level of mercury strongly. Of course, there are other related problems, but this is something that we can do and prevent. So going back about the big picture of disease development, the bioaccumulation of the toxins are extremely important. If you look at the whole immune system, it's getting weaker as we get older, but also it gets less efficient. If we have higher level of toxins in the body, then in each and every immune cell is loaded with toxins as well. For example, a lymphocyte has to produce hypochloric acid. It goes there to, let's say, a bacteria, and the hypochloric acid, like a little ball, and it injects into, let's say, a candida, the body of the candida, and this is how it kills the candida. But there's an enzyme, it's called myeloperoxidase, and mercury and lead shuts it down. So it means that the cannonballs are missing from the immune cells. So even if it goes there to the candida, it's unable to shoot.
Yeah, we're losing ammunition, the deficiencies, the weakness, the loss of vitality and energy. And like you say, the guns are, as we age,
half empty.
they're not even as powerful. So it becomes more and more ineffective.
So we should imagine almost like a graph, and when one line is slowly coming down, and that is, it's also called immune senescence. You know, the immune system as it gets older. So immune senescence, and the other line is the toxic accumulation. And when they intersect, we all have cancer cells right now. You know, a couple of hundreds, couple of thousands of cancer cells. Every day we have these cells, but the immune system is able to kill them, eliminate them. But once these two lines cross, then it flips, and then the cancer cells can start growing. There was a study, chelation-related study in Switzerland, where they did the chelation at that time, intravenous chelation, and they looked back 18 years later. It's an unusually long time frame. And compared to the control group, the group that went through with a chelation achieved a 90% reduction of cancer mortality. So not even the occurrence of cancer, but actually cancer death was 90% less over 18 years for those who went through with a good detoxification with intravenous chelation in Switzerland.
And that's amazing. And you're not talking about chelation every single year for 18 years?
No, it's only one. Yes, one time. This should be on the front page of the New York Times. You know, it's like it's a wake-up call for people to realize the long-term effect. So again, jumping back to the big picture, so detoxification can really save. So the goal is to have this point of intersection over age 120. Right, it's so logical. Again, we can visualize that if we can postpone, if we can keep the toxic load low, and if we can keep our immune system high, then we are really winners.
Well, I mean, you know, some people may want to live forever, but I guess in the ideal world, what you just described would be that we don't experience such catastrophic pain or illness of any kind. We live our 120, 130 years, and naturally, unavoidably, our energy gets to a point where we just, you know, we go to sleep and we don't wake up, but there's no pain, and it was a great life. We should have that for all people if we could appreciate what you've been saying.
Absolutely. The other aspect, so now we are talking about the toxins, and the other is the pathogens. And the pathogens, when I went to university and in the old times, they all talked about planktonic way of circulating, even if in our blood or lymph system. There are bacteria, viruses. What they do, and even in Lyme disease, there was a study done that if we give antibiotic, then the pathogens start building these biofilm communities sooner because they are attacked. So it's a very interesting way how these very smart pathogens want to survive. And most people have something somewhere, like my knees are hurting. I have a problem usually when my immune system goes down in my lungs, or most people know that there's a weak point. And that's typically the location where these pathogens congregate, and sometimes they can even hide from the immune system because they build these strong walls and they are hiding there and they support each other. They share even genes, and it's quite fascinating how they function there. What we could do, we could use again chelation. It's a biofilm buster, or it is also called, because the cations keep these outer layers stronger. So when we and actually toxic metals, for example, they harden these wall of these biofilm communities, and at the same time we should give the antibiotics if mainstream, or herbal antibiotics. And our protocol is even better if the individual is fasting, because then these bugs become hungrier and hungrier, and they open up these walls. So we can open up the walls with fasting, with detoxification, or specifically with chelation, the calcium disodium EDTA. And I would mention also all the green parts of the herbs and the fruits, vegetables. These are the flavins, the flavonoids. They are also opening up the pathogens or these biofilms. So if we combine that, then we can effectively fight against these pathogens in our body.
You're so describing well what was left so vague for me when I first studied traditional sciences, natural medicine, all of these things. And the root cause of chronic disease was stagnation. But we can now clearly see from this conversation what it all really is in the big picture. Calcification, the hypothalamus, in the arteries, you mentioned the joints just now, hardening of our body, the biofilm, the accumulation of all of these bacteria, all this debris getting hard and clogging up our body. This is why we get so sick. This is stagnation, and breaking this open and improving circulation and having fluids moving more easily in and out of the cells, waste products getting produced and coming out of cells and getting out of our body. If all of that is happening, we feel fine. Our bodies break down when we get clogged up.
And I would mention just a bit the cancer. Probably the hottest field is now the metabolic treatment or metabolic modification of cancer cells. What is missing so far, and there are only a few studies that shows that, and now we are back to the circadian rhythm, that normally the cells are, as we discussed with the circadian rhythm, probably for 12 hours it's metabolically more active, and then it quiets down. Basically we are asleep. We are fast asleep. But the cancer cells, partially because they are in a fermentative state and they have to grow and they have to feed, therefore they knock off their inside clock, the circadian clock inside the cancer cells, and they are feeding 24/7. And but now we know, and increasingly, that we can switch back to a normal circadian clock, the cancer cells. Basically, what they found that the more in metastasis, the more aggressive is a cancer cell, the more the dysfunction of the circadian rhythm is present. So it is a process towards a negative direction, but the cancer comes out as a winner when the circadian rhythm is ruined.
So you just said something mind-blowing. How do we switch that clock of the cancer cells? You said it's possible. How?
Well, one study appeared that with very simple baking soda, that's one of the way, because there were, mainstream medicine say that it's all negative and it doesn't make sense. There is this Italian doctor who used baking soda for treating cancer, but
yeah, he was attacked like crazy, like he was a whack job for doing that.
But now the studies are coming back that there is something there. Now, I'm not saying that it cures cancer, but the goal is to weaken the cancer cell. Immediately think about it. If instead of getting 100% of the energy and 100% of the food, if we push it down to 50%, because we switch on, immediately the cancer cells are weakened, right? Then we can come up with different healing methodologies.
Well, it's important what you're bringing out too is the idea that we all are, most people are not hearing this message nearly enough. We're all dealing with cancer cells circulating in our body, Lyme infection, Epstein-Barr, all kinds of infections are in us. Bacteria,
Absolutely.
pathogens.
100%.
Why are not all of us, just on our deathbed, right? It's the immune system. It's understanding that we're able to deal with it when we're younger or stronger, have more vital energy within every cell of our body. And when that immune system gets compromised, what a great big picture to understand that.
Actually, I'm working on a new product and a new way to modify also the cancer cells, but it's too early. But so,
Dr. Yanasi, I don't think I have to say it, but I will anyway. An amazing conversation I just had with you. I so appreciate your contribution to the Fatty Liver Docu class, and I know this is going to really make a big difference for people when they think about the importance of detoxification and how to go about doing it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed day 6 of the Fatty Liver Docu class. Stay tuned because we still have one more valuable day of content. And I can tell you this, we've saved the best for last. By the way, if you'd like a copy of these episodes plus all the other presentations offered inside the Fatty Liver Docu class, simply click the link below and choose the package you want, including some really valuable bonuses. Talk to you soon. Take care.